Though billions revere the Chaos gods, only a scant few dedicate themselves entirely to these deities. The Dark Lords promise most of their minions power and riches, though such gifts are not lightly given. Vain followers turn to the malevolent forces seeking influence in the material universe, only to be used by them for that same purpose in return. Yet some harbour a genuine fervour for chaos, for whom sacrificing both body and soul is but a triviality, as they burn with faith in the gods and display boundless devotion. Fervent disciples are thus doomed to perilous service to one dark power or another, with absolute dominion as the reward for those who please their patron and eternal oblivion for the failures. In pursuit of greatness in the eyes of their benefactor, his minions will execute any command, no matter how dreadful. Ultimately, the rare few are graced with demonhood and can cast aside the troubles of the mortal coil, ascending to a higher echelon of power. But attaining demonhood is no easy feat for the champions of chaos. Only the most worthy dare hope for such a reward, granting immortality and unlimited might. However, this requires a lifetime of ceaseless dedication to the destructive forces. Yet many are willing to make any sacrifice. For there is no higher goal for the mortal servants of chaos, no more coveted reward than to be liberated from the flesh, to be unburdened from worldly concerns, and to be elevated to the stature of a demon in the monstrous guise of a demon prince. Demon princes are immortal champions of chaos who have drawn the attention of the warp gods and received their most significant gifts. Many who manage to earn the favour of the chaos gods are blessed with incredible power, extraordinary mutations, or in the rarest cases, transformation into spawn of chaos. The few whose deeds set them apart from the horde, whose sacrifices are endless, and perhaps most crucially, whose physical and mental fortitudes suffices to resist the flesh change leading to deformity, may find the path to immortality and gain eternal life as a demon prince. Upon their transformation, many newly born demon princes prefer to leave behind their kin and subordinate warriors, diving fully into the realm of chaos and devoting all their attention to participating in the great game. Others in turn remain with their tribes, legions or cults, assuming a godlike position among those with whom they once stood as equals. Regardless, demon princes hold a high place in the hierarchy of the demonic pantheon. The appearance of demon princes varies widely, as each changes according to the whims of their patron god, but they all share one thing in common. They are massive, towering even over the Astartes. They possess strength and resilience far beyond the capabilities of mortals. A follower of Khorne acquires a crimson or bronze hue, and every feature of theirs becomes a reflection of fury and cruelty. An adherent of Tzeentch begins to sparkle, emitting a ghostly aura of pure magic. Nurgle's minions are bestowed with sickness as a blessing, their bodies swelling with the unclean might. A demon prince, a confidant of Slanesh, begins to move with the same unearthly grace and speed as the demons of the Lord of Excess. Yet the transformation goes far deeper than merely adopting the outward features of their benefactor. Demon princes acquire additional limbs, elongated fangs, twisted horns, tentacles, wings, and other oddities, ranging from scaly skin to warp lightning, ensnaring their forms. Each possesses lethally sharp claws, though some prefer to wield weapons, a gift from their deity, or a twisted version of their former mortal armament. Many demon princes retain remnants of their mortal selves. Former space marine traitors may wear parts of their armour or bolters, albeit in a corrupted form, yet still recognizable. Those who once led cults keep their old staff, now bristling with symbols of their new allegiance. Demon princes often lead formations of Chaos Space Marines, bolstering them with their supernatural might. Following the whims and decrees of their own gods, some offer their patronage to the servants of Chaos and forge alliances with individual champions. Most often, demon princes who command units of Chaos Space Marines were themselves Space Marines, for the apotheosis of their efforts comes when they transcend the mortal realm to achieve demonhood. To the heretic Astartes, this grants not merely grandiose strength to devote themselves entirely to the Chaos gods, but also a formidable body to slay the puppets of the false emperor. Typically, such princes are great lords and sorcerers, still clad in the twisted remnants of their armour and still driven by hatred for the Imperium. Over millennia, many of the greatest heroes of the Imperium and valiant defenders of humanity have succumbed to the temptation of the Dark Gods. A mere glance at the history of traitors such as Mortarion, Angron, and Magnus the Red suffices to understand that their names will forever be shrouded in infamy. The most infamously renowned demon princes are the Primarchs who turned to chaos during the Horus heresy, thereby cursing their legions and betraying the master of mankind. Despite all the hatred the Inquisition harbours towards them, the traitor Primarchs mainly prefer to wage war against their foes in the Eye of Terror. And, until the end of the 41st millennium, almost nothing is known about instances when they themselves led attacks from their infernal domains, as the leaders of the traitor legions prefer such raids to be conducted by their underlings, seeking approval and recognition. Although the demonic Primarchs are possibly the most fearsome and intimidating among the demon princes, there exist even more ancient and powerful beings. Such demon princes sold their souls long before humanity embarked from Terra to traverse the cosmic void. They are the cruel tyrants who ascended to power during the times of rise and fall of great civilizations, so rich in the history of a galaxy tormented by wars. The saga of the demon princes dives deep into the blood-soaked history of some of the most notorious demons of chaos, chronicling their path to power and eventual apotheosis into demonhood, while also shedding light on the contemptuous deeds they committed in the name of their abhorrent patrons and the details of their final recompense. Khor Migron, the Reaper of Rhodax. The word-bearers are renowned for their unwavering devotion to the dark gods and fanatic worship of the entire unholy pantheon of chaos. Even before the dark days of the heresy, the 17th Legion turned away from the faith in the Emperor of mankind and directed their prayers to more worthy masters. No one knows what demonic pacts and infernal deals were struck at their great betrayal, but the outcome is known. When the War Master revealed his plans and declared that the galaxy would burn, the word-bearers were at the forefront of his allies, unleashing upon the Imperium with a spiteful fervour as astonishing as it was unexpected. Elite warriors who once glorified the Emperor as the beacon and saviour of the human race committed sacrilegious blasphemies across the Imperium. Among the damned renegades who betrayed their own kind proudly strode Khor Migron, a mighty warrior who had once won many victories for the Imperium. Through his hands, hundreds of Xenos were laid low, and lost civilizations were brought to compliance. Yet in the millennia following Horus's defeat, Khor Migron sought to undo everything he had forged as a member of the Adeptus Astartes, leading others across the cosmos on a blood-soaked crusade of the word-bearers. It so happened that Khor Migron's greatest work concluded on the cathedral world of Rhodax. For 3 months the Space Marines fought their way through streets littered with corpses, against a hastily assembled army of loyalists. When his bolter ran dry of ammunition, the word-bearer cleaved his path from sanctuary to the shattered temple with an ancient power sword. And when the energy cells of his beloved weapon were depleted, its blade cracked, stuck in the back of a falling Ogrin, the word-bearer resorted to using his bare hands. Alongside his warband, he stormed the foothills of the Basilica of St. Petch, a favoured imperial saint, whose salvation was sought by the entire world. 2,000 warriors of the 14th Cadian attacked the marble steps, but the word-bearer cast them aside. Ammunition was running low, many of the renegade Space Marines were wounded, yet they did not yield, for each kill they made was an offering to chaos and an oath of loyalty to the dark gods. While his warriors fought, Khor Migron toppled a 12-metre statue of St. Petch and heaped around it the bodies of dead soldiers to erect a blasphemous barrow on the sacred ground of the basilica. When the Imperial Guardsmen once more went forth to storm the enemy, this time bolstered by agents of the Inquisition, Khor Migron ascended upon a ghastly elevation dedicated to chaos, and proclaimed his devotion to the Dark Lords of the Empyrean in full throat, and the ruinous powers rewarded his fealty. The might of chaos stretched and twisted the word-bearer's flesh. His skin charred and horns sprouted upon his head. Where once stood a proud and mighty space marine, now towered an all-powerful demon prince. Cormigron's subordinates rejoiced in his transformation and commenced battle with renewed fervour as their leader, with a clawed paw, seized and tore asunder the marble sword of St. Petch. The force of change surged into the blade and perverted the relic, making it into a blasphemous instrument of devastation. Cormigron, proudly emerging from the basilica with the sword in hand, sought to glorify the Dark Patrons once again. Now, Rhodex is a dead world, its grotesquely marred ruins isolated by command of the Inquisition. The lifeless planet drifts as a mute testament to Cormigron's raging contempt and the endless hatred of the word-bearers, Cherubale, demons spawned from the Immaterium. The natural laws of the real world prevent these creatures from manifesting in the material dimension without significant effort. Thus, those who summon such beings must weaken the barriers between the warp and the real world through rituals of sacrilege, offerings, and the correct words of power. But a far easier path for demons to infiltrate the material world is through possession, where a creature of the warp uses the vulnerable mind of a weak-willed psyker as a bridge between the warp and physical reality. The Holy Inquisition of the Emperor has long been aware of the ravages brought by the demon Prince Cherubale. The name of this abomination has tainted many pages of the Liber Malum, a thrice-cursed tome recounting the fate of those damned to walk the path of damnation, shackled in the deepest dungeons of the Libri Sanctus on Holy Terror. While a mere mention of this book's name could bring about madness, scribe servitors manually log entries of the demonic atrocities therein to aid the heroes standing against the warp's spawn. The dungeons of the archive groan under the terrible contents of these books, and the rune-scarred walls shudder. Entire volumes of their Liber Malum are dedicated to the menace known as the demon prince Cherubale. The pitiful survivors of the Finestra system know him as the Death of Worlds, while the inhabitants of the Kitarax Nebula call the creature Bechom. For thousands, if not millions of years, Cherubale has carved through the galaxy's inhabitants, leaving only unimaginable destruction and agony in his wake. In a single night, he exterminated the civilization of Roni and plunged the entire Gefme sector into hell for 1,000 years. Masquerading as a prophesied lord, Cherubale compelled the population of planet Medredax to commit ritual suicides and drank their psychic death energy like sweet wine. His transgressions are beyond counting, and there are few in the galaxy so vile and cruel. The Prince of Demons met his match only on the world of Clanar II, where he enslaved the savages to perform a sacrifice in his name of unimaginably vast proportions. Cherubale devoured entire generations before Inquisitor Quixos freed the people of Clanar from his horrific rule. The Inquisitor led a small band of warriors, fought the demon prince's host, and dealt a fatal blow with a demonic blade, within which resided the bound essence of Karnagar, the Deathbringer, a demon prince. Quixos had defeated several decades prior. The essence of Cherubale burst from the dying human vessel and dove into the nearest available body, belonging to one of the greatest warriors of Clanar II, so as not to return to the icy abyss of the Immaterium. But Quixos had foreseen this, and before the battle had inscribed hidden protective pentagrams and powerful binding symbols on the bodies of his aides. The fury of the imprisoned demon tore through its host. Energetic spasms warped the flesh and scorched the eyes, transforming the new prison into a vague semblance of the demon's true form. Rudimentary horns burst from the back of the host's skull, and soulless white light flared where once there were eyes. A hurricane of pure psychic force raged around the body, tossing it high into the air. Phantom winds twisted and bent the empty human shell, but all of Cherubale's efforts were in vain. Quixos knew all too well the nature of the Chaos Spawn, and left the demon prince without a single chance for salvation. He bound the writhing creature in chains and hammered blessed golden spikes into its flesh, reciting 666 lines of the enslavement hymn. Quixos then bound to Cherubale scrolls covered in unspeakable oaths, written in the Inquisitor's own blood with chains of silver. After a grueling battle of wits, Quixos bent the demon prince to his will. From that moment on, the demon Prince Cherubale was doomed to serve the Inquisitor, and its bloody millennial path found its end. But Quixos was no ordinary inquisitor. Many years before his confrontation with Cherubale, he had banished another demon in the world of Lacan 15. However, shards of the beast's claws buried themselves in Quixos's heart and remained there forever, as all attempts to extract them failed. The influence of the shards gradually changed Quixos's body and gave him a significant connection to the warp and a degree of understanding of chaos entities. Thus, the Inquisitor decided to explore the potential of using the powers of the warp, earning him a reputation among his peers as an unreliable figure. Now, with Quixos having subdued the demon prince to his will, the radical's abilities increased day by day, but his body became distorted and his mind sunk deeper into the mire of madness. The warp-born powers and psychic might of the demon host proved invaluable to the Inquisitor, and in the ensuing century, Quixos and Cherubale eliminated many grave threats. Yet Quixos was compelled to conduct heretical rituals to transfer the essence of the demon prince into new bodies, as even the awe-inspiring power of Cherubale could not eternally ward off the decay of its vessel. The flesh of each victim over time grew so weak that it could no longer contain the creature, and with every new incarnation of the demon prince, Quixos lost another fragment of his humanity. He delved deeper into the mysteries of chaos, causing his knowledge and power to grow, as did the grotesqueness of his flesh and spirit. Rumours suggest that the fetters devised by Quixos to enslave Cherubale were doomed to fail from the start, and it was the insidious tendrils of entropy stealthily emerging from the bound vessel that drove the Inquisitor to the brink of madness. It is likely that no one will ever know the truth, as in the year 342 of the 41st millennium, Inquisitor Eisenhorn declared Quixos a heretic and issued an extremis diabolus warrant against him. 3 years later, Eisenhorn executed the renegade and Cherubale came to serve him. The obligations accompanying this are shrouded in secrecy, as Eisenhorn has never disclosed what truly transpired between him and Quixos. Since then, the demon prince has fought alongside the Inquisitor for many years, leading Eisenhorn's adversaries to suspect that his close bond with the demon host has been the cause of Gregor's heightened psychic abilities in recent decades. It remains uncertain, though many believe that Eisenhorn is slowly becoming as great a threat to the stability of the Imperium as the renegade Quixos. Only time will unveil the truth. Marabas. The names of fallen brethren known to the Dark Angel assemble for them a list of shame, and their faces a portrait gallery of villainous betrayals. If the foremost among the traitors is undoubtedly Cypher, then closely following him in infamy is the demon prince Marabas. Fragmentary and unfinished reports about the fallen leader named Marabas, who heads bands of renegades, first reached the Rock in the 36th millennium, but it remains unknown for what deeds the demon prince was granted the foul boon of the dark gods, and whether it concerns the same traitor at all. What can be stated with certainty is that the winged beast speaks too much truth and still wears fragments of armour that unquestionably belong to the First Legion. Worse, the very appearance of the monster is an affront to the memory of the Dark Angel's Primarch. After mutation, Marabas's skull took on the distorted shape of one of the fearsome lions that once ruled the forests of Caliban. As soon as the endless night concluded, following the emergence of the Great Rift, the fortress monastery of the Dark Angel's Order was assaulted. An army of warp monsters led by one of the fallen, the demon Prince Marabas, breached the formidable shields around the asteroid base. Battles ignited in the docks, within the vast halls, and even through the labyrinth of lower levels and dungeons, burrowing deep into the heart of the rock. At the battle's climax, the invaders vanished as suddenly as they had materialized. The foes achieved nothing but senseless slaughter and devastation. Or so it seemed to the warriors. But one among them knew the truth. From the deepest dungeon, a prisoner known only to the supreme Grand Masters of the chapter was liberated. Now Azrael suspects that the entire invasion was a diversion, aimed at achieving their true goal by the dishonourable foes. Yet he must keep his suspicions to himself, for no one must learn of Luther's confinement. In that battle, the great master Belial saved Samael, the leader of the Deathwing, from the deadly grasp of Marabas by severing the fallen's hand with a blow from the Sword of Silence at the last moment. Alas, the Deathwing master could not finish his task. The beast with a lion's head broke free and fled, its vile claw regenerating almost instantly. Since then, warriors of the Second Company have captured more than 20 renegades, but Samael only thinks of the one that got away. He yearns to bring retribution to Prince Marabas. Acerbus, master of the axe. The demon lord known as Lord Acerbus began his life as a mortal man, yet his descent into demonhood started long ago, in the dark alleys of Nanostrum 5, the home planet of the Night Lords. For one born and raised amidst barbarism and gangsterism, there was no path but to join the Legion, a name that was to become synonymous with terror. Conrad Kersey, the Night Haunter, a brooding and contemplative Primarch, led his progeny, sowing death among the enemies of mankind and proclaiming planets as part of the Imperium. Throughout the Acerbus Crusade, they fought for their genetic sire better than any other, mastering his tactics of terror. Never ceasing to learn, Acerbus, having become a sinister figure in the Legion, continued to hone his skills, killing and maiming, uncaring for ideals and principles unlike the Ultramarines or the Imperial Fists. In the times of the Great Crusade, many of the Space Marine legions immortalized their names through acts of heroism and valor, but the Night Lords had their own vision of warfare, annihilating the foes of humanity swiftly and with savage efficiency. These methods completely reflected the Legion's philosophy. The methodical planning of the Imperial Fists was not for them. Nor did the surgical strikes of the Raven Guard appeal to the Night Lords. The Night Lords preferred to drive their enemies to madness with psychological assaults, reveling in their fear, before dealing with all from the least to the greatest. It was then that the fates of the Night Lords Chapter Master and Acerbus were predetermined. The list of atrocities committed by the Night Lords during the Crusade is endless. Certainly, countless foes were eradicated, yet for every alien or heretic slain, thousands of innocents perished. On the planet Juno 4, Acerbus led an assault on one of the Xenophiles' cults. It was discovered that cultists had infiltrated the planet's government, and Acerbus ordered the execution of about 500,000 people to eliminate even the possibility of overlooking a single heretic. On Plaga Secundus, Acerbus unhesitatingly executed the Night Haunter's order and bombarded an entire continent with virus bombs, all to obliterate a lone temple of chaos. This act instilled terror even at the mere mention of the 8th Legion's name. Such barbarity, committed in the Emperor's name, could not go unnoticed, and the actions of the Night Lords were condemned. It was then that Acerbus began the campaign to besiege the planet Sagualsa, marking the Legion's transition to Horus's side. When there was no longer a need to justify the Night Haunter's deeds, Acerbus and his legionnaires descended upon the galaxy, seeking to destroy everything in their path. The heresy was Acerbus's finest hour. While Conrad Kurz lay in a stupor, struggling with nightmarish visions of his own end, Acerbus partook in the civil war and numerous acts of genocide. He led his company, bringing death and destruction to the loyal Astartes. At the war's climax, during the battle for Terra, news of the War Master's death reached Acerbus. Then he summoned to his aid the full might of chaos, unified and indivisible, and the gods heard him and answered. By the time the Night Haunter fell at the hands of the imperial assassin he himself had foretold, Acerbus, blessed with otherworldly power, was already commanding a significant contingent of the Night Lords. He and his pack became a true plague upon the Imperium. In the millennium following the Horus heresy, he cast down 30 imperial worlds. Acerbus initiated his raids without any apparent reason, as if solely for his own pleasure, and to sacrifice new souls to the indivisible chaos. In the year 832 of the 33rd millennium, Acerbus committed a ghastly, abominable act, for which he received the highest reward, demonhood. Gathering a vast warband of Night Lords, he set course for the holy world of Castilia 5, where the sororitas of the Hospitaller Order were based. From there, the sisters carried out humanitarian missions to neighbouring sectors and had recently evacuated the inhabitants of the Antilles system, where a terrible plague epidemic had broken out. Refugees settled around the sisters' monastery on Castilia 5, and Acerbus descended upon them with all his fury and might. Despite resistance, soon all was finished. 2 million innocent souls were sacrificed to chaos. At dawn, the day following the slaughter, Acerbus stood upon the ruins of the monastery. His triumphant roar signalled his long-awaited transformation into a demon prince. And to this day, Acerbus represents a grave threat to the Imperium, and the Inquisition has attempted to destroy him many times. Every attempt ended in the death of an experienced inquisitor. His soul offered as sacrifice to the undivided chaos, Angra Mainyu. During the period of the heresy, Angra Mainyu was a favoured assistant of Corferon. He was honoured with leading one of the squads during the assault on the planet of Calth in Ultramar, where the despised Ultramarines were conducting reorganisation and rearmament, while Lorgar led the rest of the Legion to Terra. In the battle for Calth, Angra preferred to use rapid assault forces, commanding the frontal reserve and a substantial contingent of assault marines under one of his 3 deputies, Metare. The squads of tactical marines, led by Lieutenant Dras, and the Devastators, commanded by Anglichel, were clearly slower than the assault forces, so they were tasked with providing suppressive fire. During the battle, other members of their unholy brotherhood sacrificed slaves and summoned abominable demons of the warp. For his obedient worship of the powers of chaos, Angra Mainyu was marked by them as chosen and embarked on the path of demonhood. They protected him from harm, and when Mainyu, leading the assault operations on Calth, was wounded several times, the dark gods miraculously healed him. After the death of Horus and the reinforcement of the Ultramarines, the word-bearers retreated from Ultramar to the planets of Sycharis and Gulmak, and into the vicinity of the Eye of Terror. However, not all the traitors were pleased with the retreat. Angra Mainyu wished to continue the war and bring bloody vengeance to the unfortunate citizens of the Imperium. Yet Dras cautioned his commander against this course of action. He believed that, in the wake of the War Master's death, it was a time for unity and gathering strength before the next assault. However, Angros, maddened by unholy belief and personal failures in combat against the Ultramarines on Calth, unleashed a tirade of accusations at Dras, branding him a coward and weakling, and cast him out. After his expulsion, Dras assembled his own warband and set forth to preach the dark faith to the nearest imperial planets within the Eye of Terror. He offered a simple choice: renounce faith in the Emperor's lies and embrace the dark gods, or perish. Many in the Imperium stayed loyal to the God Emperor and were crushed. Yet, just as many forsake their oaths and accepted from Dras the gift of eternal damnation. Thus, to his followers, he became known as the Crimson Pilgrim. Slowly and methodically he increased his army, including not only traitors from the Word-bearers, but also renegades from the Imperial Guard and inhabitants of the Imperium. Meanwhile, Angros delved deeper into the abyss of madness as his path to long-awaited demonhood neared its culmination. The transformation was complete shortly before the 13th Black Crusade of Abaddon, and during it, Angra Mainyu lost favour with the Dark Patrons. Bereft of sanity, he naively believed the Chaos Lords still favoured him. However, the ruinous powers are whimsical and fickle, and soon Angros found himself out of favour. At the same time, Dras returned to seize power over Manu's forces by force, but to his pleasant surprise, Angra no longer controlled his minions. Indeed, for his numerous failures, he had been transformed into demonic spawn. Thus, Dras took command of his army, swearing allegiance to the Dark Apostle, Dras, the Red Pilgrim. The demon princes of Khorne, also known as the favourites of the Blood God, the Blood Princes, and the Lords of Bones, are the very embodiments of slaughter. Vast, muscular, and wrathful, they rank among the most fearsome minions of the Dark Gods. Few have encountered them on the battlefield and emerged victorious. Their fury is so ferocious that the very ground beneath them blackens and the heavens weep with blood rain. Khorne values brute strength above all, and thus his greatest champions are invariably distinguished by their massive stature and towering height. It could not be otherwise, for in battle they wield gargantuan axes, swords, whips, or other cold weapons. Those, however, who in their mortal lives preferred to crush their foes with bare hands, upon reaching demonhood, rarely forsake their old habits. They march to war armed only with unadulterated malice, dreadful fangs, and terrifyingly long and large claws, capable of tearing enemies to shreds in mere moments. Utilizing the advantages of their immense size, these titans often simply ram into the enemy ranks like a wrecking ball, trampling everyone in their path and scattering them aside. Many demon princes, furthermore, are gifted by their patrons with leathery wings, enabling them to swiftly cross the battlefield and plunge into the thick of the enemy forces. The demon princes of Khorne, once Chaos Space Marines, might wield firearms such as bolters or flamers that are imbued with the warp's power. Although Khorne despises magic, his highest champions sometimes exude such hatred that it instills terror in all those nearby, as if it were a sorcerous aura. The sight of a crimson giant charging at you at great speed can drive any foe to despair and falter. Conversely, the followers of the Blood God are invigorated in the presence of such bloodthirsty behemoths as the demon princes, and fight with increased fervour. Child of Doom. With a mighty cry he awoke, brighter than the sun and far more ferocious. In his hand he held a staff made of twisted bone, warped and coiled in the shape of the sigil of his new Dark Lord, a symbol of his power and the fruition of mortal desires. He towered above his entire entourage, looking down with haughty pride upon his frightened slaves. He roared, and the sound of his great hatred echoed off the heavens. In his cruel gaze was an unquenchable fury, and death threatened all upon whom his gaze fell. And on that desolate wasteland, his deathly pale servants turned, gripped by cold and unspeakable terror, and fled from his very presence. And then, on that accursed ground, a demon prince, named the Child of Doom, was born, and upon his arrival he bellowed forth. Khorne awoke earlier than the other gods, and the doomed child became one of his first servants. His true human name had long been forgotten, but once he was a mighty warlord, commanding armies that devastated entire peoples upon the earth. But this was very, very long ago, in the first or second millennium. His acts of genocide and murder so pleased the young Khorne that he rewarded him and made him one of his first demon princes. Having wings, and thus able to cross the battlefield in immense leaps, the Doom Child radiates absolute terror, for his very presence poses a threat to the sanity of any mortal, even those with the strongest of wills. In appearance he resembles a gigantic bloodthirsty being, shrouded in black smoke that transforms into crimson muscles as the demon prince grows in size, revelling in violence. His legs bent backwards end in mighty hooves, his sharp teeth are as long as swords, and from his moist, bloodied flesh hangs a tattered cloak made of flayed skin. In his right hand, the Doom Child clenches a mighty axe, infused with the energy of chaos and having tasted the death of countless foes, and in his left, a vast staff of twisted bone with a mark of Khorne as the tip. The Blood God detests all who wield magic to its fullest extent, and this staff bears dire retribution to those who practice the sorcerous arts. The demon prince is clad in copper plate armour adorned with the symbols of his patron, so resilient that it can withstand almost any blow. Upon their surface boils the inexhaustible inner energy of the very Child of Doom, for these armours are inseparable from him. It is said that the collar for this armour was forged in the flames of Khorne's wrath at the foot of his brass throne, specifically to absorb the surrounding warp energy, thereby empowering its wearer and shielding them from psychic attacks. Since the ascension of the Child of Doom, also known as the Lord of Skulls, he has continued to faithfully serve his master. He fought on the side of Horus during the period of the heresy, and together with another demon, Prince Nakara, even battled the Emperor aboard the War Master's battle barge. Over the subsequent millennia, the Child of Doom has returned countless times to torment humanity. For instance, during the Fifth Black Crusade, the Child of Doom was summoned by none other than Abaddon the Despoiler himself, who sacrificed 10 million citizens for this purpose. The War Master promised the Demon Prince the skulls of all space marines that would arrive on the planet Tarrant, and in the brutal massacre that the Dark Lord orchestrated, 2 chapters, the Battlehawks and the Devotees, were completely annihilated. At the dusk of the 41st millennium, the Child of Doom partook in the 13th Black Crusade, and afterwards joined the Blood Crusade that swept across the galaxy. The Bloodclaw Butcher, a demonic realm called the Crucible, located in the Calixis sector, a glorious battlefield for demons seeking to elevate their status in the eyes of the Lord of Rage. The Bloodclaw Butcher is among those who have ascended to the level of an immortal prince of demons in this ever-shifting world, but success only fueled his hunger for more opportunities to spill blood and collect skulls in the name of his patron god. According to legends, this prince of demons was once a Chaos Space Marine who tracked and killed over 100 loyalists in a single battle at the end of a long path to glory, paved with the corpses of thousands of decapitated Astartes. When he offered the final skull to the Lord of Battles, he was transformed into a prince of demons, gifted with a new form in recognition of his ability to hunt prey. Now resembling a humanoid Hound of Khorne, the Bloodclaw leads a pack of these demons in an endless hunt for space marines, both loyalist and those serving the ruinous powers. For Khorne cares not from whence the skulls come, only that they are offered. The Winged Slayer, the fury of the heavens. Lesser demons of the Crucible scurry from shadow to shadow, to remain unseen under the heavens, which, as the Mad claim, have come under the rule of a demon prince named the Winged Slayer. He became infamous for the merciless eradication of everyone bound to the ground. He descends upon the enemy as if from nowhere, vanishing only to return for the purpose of collecting skulls in the name of the Blood God. Ancient tales hint that once the Winged Slayer was a mere mortal, obsessed with the desire to fly and marvelled by the mighty sky predators catching their earthbound prey. Throughout his life, the frenzied warrior mastered the art of mechanical flight and slaughtered enemies in Khorne's name. And when he had terrorized an entire nation to the extent that none dared venture under the open sky for fear of his atrocities, the Skull Lord gifted the champion his blessing. In some circles, this creature is considered merely a legend, yet the Winged Slayer is often blamed when a body is found or a soul goes missing. According to the tales, the demon's wingspan is broader than an entire tank platoon, and his axe is truly immense, but usually he is described simply as a blurred red smear, leaving only death in his wake. Uraka Asbaramael. In the countless epoch after the beginning of time, those who yearned to wield power with the blade became the chosen mortal servants of Khorne. Many took the easy path offered by the dark gods of slaughter, for Khorne promised them unparalleled combat abilities and legions of followers, including demonic soldiers, in exchange only for participation in endless wars and horrific carnage in his name. The choice for the reckless was obvious. Among these individuals was Uraka, who led armies in ancient and forgotten times. His veteran riders were a blight upon the surrounding lands, setting ablaze, plundering and slaughtering all in their path. Kings and princes of those times trembled before Uraka, oftentimes buying their reprieve with gold and silver from his raids. Yet some resisted and invoked upon themselves the boundless wrath of the merciless warlord. When one city fell under siege, Uraka ordered the townsfolk lined up. Over 2 harrowing days, thousands were beheaded. This massacre sealed Uraka's fate, bequeathing his immortal soul to Khorne. As true rivers of blood flowed through the streets, the pleased god of war embraced Uraka into his fold. Thus the war leader became a champion of the blood god. Uraka's reign of terror lasted 10 years, filled with battles and raids, earning him the moniker of the Demon of War. The mortal champion so delighted Khorne that upon his death in battle, the gods summoned Uraka's soul to his realms. Uraka was reborn in the Brass Citadel and faced his destiny head-on. The blood god put him through a final trial. Before a throne of skulls surrounded by the mightiest of demons, Uraka was to fight for the amusement of his lord, a bloodthirsty duel. Victory would grant him demonhood and the chance to fight eternally in Khorne's glory. Defeat would transform him into a spawn of chaos and madness. Uraka chose his weapon from the thousands that adorned the walls of the throne hall. It was a massive axe with razor-sharp serrated blades, the executioner's weapon beheading those who betrayed Khorne. Demons dispersed, leaving a space clear for a duel in the fateful field before the throne. The bloodthirster was a colossal beast seasoned in battle, while Uraka was but a mere mortal. Yet he did not fall beneath the devastating blows of the behemoth. Bloodied but unbroken, Uraka relentlessly fought back until he finally severed the enemy's head with an axe swing. Khorne was pleased, for such a duel was worthy of his champions. Uraka's reward was demonhood, and an army that followed him in an endless battle across the fields of skulls and into the realms of other gods. To this day he wields the very same executioner's axe. In the 41st millennium, Uraka and his infernal legion were summoned to Vrax to guard a warp portal, and they fought until the very end of the war, until the Grey Knights banished the demon prince. They could not destroy him, only sent him back to Khorne's dimension, and there is no doubt that Uraka will return to fight in the name of the Blood God. For the demon princes of Slaanesh, the highest honor for any mortal devotee of the dark chaos forces is the opportunity to serve as a demon prince. And the ways to achieve this status vary significantly from one god to another. A follower of the brutal Khorne, for example, must orchestrate massacres in his name, harvesting a crop of skulls and spilling rivers of blood until the Lord of Battles takes notice of his endeavours. This is a fairly simple, straightforward approach that is largely the same for all servants of the Blood God. The path to greatness, for those wishing to fully indulge in the embrace of the Lord of Excess, is far less clear. Many doors lay open before them, beyond which the curious and devoted followers eagerly await the exploration of the secret trail. All they need to do is choose one and enter it, venturing into depths of excess so profound that it piques the interest of Slaanesh. Once they have garnered their patron's attention, a champion must continue, breaking every moral foundation. They are required to astonish the Prince of Pleasure to such an extent that they not only stand out among others, but become worthy of reward, for uniqueness alone is insufficient for greatness. The touches of the Dark Prince are often terrifying and brutal. He disfigures his followers, transforming them into mindless and unnatural beings. All gods are whimsical and unlikely to lavishly bestow their blessed mutations for nothing. However, Slaanesh's penchant for indulging his whims makes his favours particularly risky. The diligence of an unfortunate mortal can lead to downfall and transformation into a monstrous spawn of chaos, simply because the Lord of Pleasure was not in the mood. Those who manage to receive the greatest gift achieve the coveted immortality and are reborn as demon princes. Sensual, chosen children, beloved and blessed in flesh. Yet such is the capricious nature of Slaanesh that even this grand achievement is seen more as a beginning than an end point. For a freshly minted Prince of Demons, there can be no ceasing in the pushing of boundaries. Should his ascendancy be rooted in the crafting of an elixir, so delectably enticing that the mere scent of it compels men to incessantly imbibe until they drown in its embrace, then he must conspire to taint entire worlds' water reserves with a malignant brew. Having achieved this task, the demon prince must venture further, always seeking ways to leave his bewitched victims with a voracious grin etched upon their faces. The cycle is endless, and should failure darken his path, a disappointed Slaanesh can transform even a mighty prince of demons into the vilest abomination, or unleash upon him a fate even more grievous, Nankari. Nankari's genesis was on a backward, isolated world that had fallen into a temporal snare, trapped in the throes of a raging warp storm for millennia. The forces of chaos ceaselessly endeavoured to conquer the planet, yet each attempt was thwarted by its unblemished inhabitants. Nankari earned his notoriety during one of the Chaos God's numerous bids to seize the world. He proved himself a zealous devotee of Slaanesh through countless battles and the unrestrained orgies that followed each victory, earning his transformation into a demon for his services. Nankari harbours disdain for any bearing the mark of Khorne, and would not deign to fight alongside them, save for a moment of dire portent, such as when he, along with the offspring, took arms under Horus during the period of heresy. The demon prince possesses such an allure that anyone who faces him in combat finds it difficult to deliver the killing blow. Nakari revels in any form of sensual experience, no matter how terrifying or bizarre, and hence does not fear death. Rather, he sees it as a desired and rare occurrence. The demon prince wields a sceptre of power, which appears as a straight rod made of bone, intricately decorated with scenes of orgies. It was crafted from the remains of a bloodthirsty being slain by Nakari in personal combat. Nakari, another troublesome demon prince. Originally, when he first appeared in the second edition of the Chaos Codex, the authors classified him among demon princes alongside such entities as Frosthorn and Macachan. However, he was later referred to as a greater demon. It could be suggested that this was due to inconsistencies in the lore, but not so long ago in the Horus Heresy series, meticulously fact-checked for adherence to canon, a novel titled Slave of Darkness once again termed Nakari as a demon prince, even elevating his status. The matter seemed settled until 6 months later, a publication on the rise of the Inari introduced the term Greater Demon once again. The community remains in confusion about his correct title. Mistress of Spite. Within the screaming vortex on the demon world of repentance, at the very epicenter of madness unfolding in the great city, squatting like a monstrous toad, sits the sole local Slaaneshi princess, Mistress of Spite, a veritable devil among fiends. Her humanoid body is grotesquely bloated beyond measure, with vast folds of fat hanging from her arms. Even her thick legs cannot bear her incredible weight. Hence she languorously reclines upon a gargantuan chariot drawn by 6 teams of 6 steed of Slaanesh. Her visage melds androgynous features, and to the great dismay of all who gaze upon it, instills lascivious thoughts. 3 pairs of curved horns protrude from her head, and from her shoulders sprouts a third hand, crowned with a massive claw. Across each of her forearms runs a long slit, slick with moisture and concealing a growth extending to polished bone. Upon these spurs her most beloved enemies are impaled, despairingly looking into the eyes of their mistress as they perish, shuddering and moaning from ecstatic torment. Inhabitants of the great city whisper that in times past the mistress was the mortal consort of Nakari, the first and greatest of Slaanesh's keepers in the whirlwind region, and that she attained her current form while striving for demonhood, committing gastronomic feats and thereby desolating entire worlds. No sooner did the shriek at her birth fade in the warp than Nakari tired of his wife and abandoned her for another amusement. Struck by grief, the Duchess felt the pain of loss crystallize, filling the void in her heart, and then she vowed to share her agony with every living being, first in the whirlwind and then across the galaxy. Currently, she dwells in a state of penitence, where her entire existence is reduced to sharing the bitterness of separation with those around her. The spread of suffering has wholly consumed her, and this passion intensifies with every wail at the last breath she hears, driving her to relive that perfect moment of agony when Nakari abandoned her over and over again. The Duchess, in particular, is drawn to the emotional experiences of a broken heart and betrayal. She has become a true master of societal intrigues through which she rules over penitents. Every fiend in her infernal world simultaneously despises and adores her, and would do anything to please her, just to avoid becoming the mistress' next victim. In turn, she eagerly exploits this position to achieve her own goals, pushing these worthless sycophants towards increasingly vile acts and feeding off their sensations. To this end, she organizes lavish carnivals, feasts and rituals with countless participants, and when excitement at these events peaks, the Duchess greedily revels in it. Satiating herself with pain and pleasure, joy and despair, she grows in size, for the absorbed emotions transform into new lumps of flesh on her boundless bulk. Initially, Mistress of Spite engaged in these acts so that Nakari would notice her and call upon her for marriage once again. When she realized that what she desired would never come to pass, she began plotting his downfall, hoping that if she could amass enough power, she would overthrow him and take his place. However, over time, this ambition became secondary. Now the mistress is so entranced by her own might that all her actions, every life she takes, every dream she shatters, and every tear shed in her name serves only her personal whims. She no longer cares about vengeance or the opinions of others. Instead, she indulges her caprices, destroying lives and setting legions of demons against each other for no reason other than her own pleasure. Sil'eske represents a vengeful alliance. An unseemly force inspired thousands of leaders to acts of tyranny and disorder. But since she entwined her fate with that of Eske, a demonic monarch consumed by a mania for grandeur, the harbinger of the Lord of Excess transformed into a unique force known as the Vengeful Allegiance. The close adherents of Slaanesh once shunned the heralderess for her tendency to become too attached to those she was supposed to tempt into self-destruction. Yet this peculiar affection eventually paved the way to glory. When a mortal slave named Eske, a fighter in one of the gladiatorial arenas in the gardens of the Dark Prince, caught the demoness's eye, she decided to elevate the warrior to unparalleled heights in the art of slaughter. Through patronage, Eske managed to carve a path to the status of a demon prince, yet the courtly demons spurned him as a former mortal. Thus, Eske's forces united to avenge those who rejected them, forming a cohesive team that amalgamated cunning, speed, and brute force. Treading a bloody trail of retribution towards the throne of the Lord of Pleasures himself, the duo forever bonded their fates in the diabolical pact. Now they are the symbiotic entity Sil'eske, waging war with terrifying coordination. The very alliance that once made them outcasts ultimately led to their mutual flourishing. Axis-Anaya, perhaps one of the first warlords of the Screaming Vortex, embodies the pursuit of greatness. Legends of his valor in battle and victories over the Xenos roam across hundreds of worlds. But all these tales also recount his love of instilling fear in his foes before vanquishing them. Seeking to approach his enemy as closely as possible, he went so far as to allow himself to be captured, merely to witness the change in his adversaries when the trap closed, and they realized how gravely they had erred. For Axis-Anaya this was the most divine of pleasures, and it's rumoured, even after ascending to the ranks of Slaaanesh's demon princes, he sang whilst cutting through the ranks of foes. Unlike many other demons, he welcomed the opportunity to become a demonic engine, to share his unique pleasures and torments with a broader audience. But in reality, he more closely resembles a walking Calabastrian sculpture than a war construct. Each of his 4 intricately jointed and flexible arms holds thin blades, licked by dark purple flames. His rotating head bears an image of a sealed helm on one side, and on the other a screaming face through which he speaks. Constantly emitting a low hum of subsonic waves, he approaches the enemy ranks closely, desiring to observe and sense signs of fear. The sound of accelerated heartbeats, the smell of emptying bladders and bowels, the sight of troops running in panic. All of this creates for him a beautiful symphony of horror with the sensors on Axis-Anaya's mechanical shell. Anyone who can withstand his song is rewarded with the sight of the closed helm, thus testing their courage, though in reality even fewer opponents survive after seeing his second face. The demon princes of Nurgle, also known as the spreaders of plagues, the filthy lords, or harbingers of rebirth, are cumbersome monsters whose unnatural endurance makes them nearly invincible. They swell with the overflowing life and bulging flesh that breaks through their cracked armor, while from beneath their dead skin oozes rotten fat and putrid intestines, shielding them from bullets. Concepts like pain and weakness have long become alien to them, for even a direct hit from an anti-tank round would hardly slow such a being. Should it result in a perforation, it will likely only serve to douse both foes and allies alike with filth and excrement. Exceptional resilience is not the sole virtue boasted by the ascended favourites of Nurgle. Demon princes, the Lords of Decay, possess such formidable might that they can lift and hurl tanks or scatter enemy warriors with sweeping blows of rusted blades or venomous talons. Many among them also wield psychic abilities that allow them to bend the warp's energy to their will, unleashing upon their adversaries an array of plagues, streams of foul slime, or casting dire, debilitating curses. Some of these demons can even take to the skies, soaring above the battlefield on gargantuan fly wings, or in cyclones of malignant vapours. They exude poisonous spores or deadly viral strains, while others act as walking incubators for blight flies. All their dark powers are directed towards spreading the noxious gifts of Nurgle and annihilating the enemies of their master. Within the Death Guard Legion, for instance, the demon princes become generals, leading septic cohorts and Victoriums to war. Their followers comply with their orders without question, for demon princes not only retain their martial prowess and cunning from their former lives, but also embody the benevolence of the Plague Father. The Death Guard revere them as demigods, their unholy might surpassed only by Mortarion himself. However, the harsh truth is that the demon princes exchanged the shackles of mortal existence for a different kind of servitude. Reveling in their might, they fail to grasp the irony of their attained immortality, for in reality they are now eternally subjugated to the will of Nurgle, Purgor the Putrescent. Among the Death Guard, legends circulate of a champion so vile that the mere sight of him would freeze even the most seasoned veterans in horror, turning them to dust. It is said that the appearance, unbearable stench, and sheer undiluted malice of the warrior known as Purgor, the Putrescent, allowed no one to gaze upon him without losing their sanity. Purgor the Putrescent was among the most infectious and disgusting of Nurgle's champions. Nurgle himself deeply sympathized with his minion and was so proud of him that he once bestowed upon him so many gifts that Purgor the Putrescent became the embodiment of his name, degenerating into a nightmarish spawn. Typically, a spawn of chaos would perish within mere hours, if not minutes after transformation, having been lost in battle or died from the monstrous mutations overwhelming the body. However, such a fate did not befall Purgor the Putrescent. Through some unfathomable whim of fate, or perhaps Nurgle's own design, Purgor the Putrescent learned to survive by consuming soft tissues and biological fluids, which allowed him to continue growing and gaining unprecedented might. His maw became akin to the entrance of a cave, lined with rows of rotten fangs, from which he could extend sticky and strong rope-like elongated tongues. Thus, this abomination spawned from a deranged mind devoured all living beings in its path, and with every soul consumed, its body transformed. Layers of fat stretched its skin to the limit and tore it apart, while from every tear on its body sprouted new tentacles, clusters of wildly spinning eyes, and foul insectoid legs. It is said that the abomination grew until it became a massive, writhing, groaning monster the size of a cargo shuttle, infused with the entropic energy of the warp and diabolical diseases. Additionally, a huge cloud of flies began to swarm around it, hampering any attacks against it. Nurgle was extremely pleased with the abomination's rampages, at least so the legend goes. But Mortarion flew into a rage over the losses that the hellish creature had inflicted on his legion, for its hunger was all-consuming, and it made no distinction between friend and foe. The Primarch could not simply destroy this vile beast, dearly beloved by his patron god. Equally, he refused to tolerate the monster's continuing rampages. Rumour has it that the Death Lord banished the abomination to the dank wilderness of a plague planet to hunt the unfortunate tribes of mortals, and since then it purportedly crawls among the dead marshes, bloated like a living mountain. If this is true, then woe betide anyone who unwittingly steps on the slime-soaked soil of the abomination's hunting grounds. In the second edition of the game, the abomination was considered both a spawn of chaos and a prince of demons, which was reflected in its rules. Moreover, he was a master of sorcery, commanding all the psychic might of Nurgle. Later, the rules concerning him were removed, and in the background it was only mentioned that he was a spawn. However, considering the peculiar nature of the festering one, he could probably still be counted among the demon princes. The demon prince, now known as the Bearer, was once Joseph Malon, a common sailor of the Imperial Navy in the Calixis sector. From his earliest years, Malon was widely regarded as an appalling voidfarer, notorious for his unreliability, stubbornness, and chronic shirking of duties. Joseph was hailed as the laziest man across the entire fleet, a title he wore with pride. Though perhaps an exaggeration, Malon indeed detested work, and avoided it whenever possible, which was easier to accomplish aboard the massive ships of the Imperial Navy than one might think. For 50 years he hid in the underbellies of void ships from his superiors and duties until a chance event forever altered his life. During a fateful voyage when the Geller field failed and a local warp breach occurred, Malon, as part of a security detachment, engaged Nurgle's demons in a ferocious battle and contracted an infection. Due to either a twist of fate or perhaps a miracle, the disease caused neither weakness nor decay and remained unnoticed. Though Malon suffered not from the contagion, he spread it and over the ensuing years infected thousands of voidfarers and servants of the Imperial Navy with a dreadful plague. Eventually Joseph was found by emissaries of the Lord of Decay and greeted in port. They told him he had been serving Nurgle for decades, spreading decay among his comrades, and that Grandfather Nurgle was pleased with his efforts and ready to reward them. Grandfather Plague granted him eternal respite, far from the hardships of fleet life and the threats of boatswains, and in exchange Malon simply continued to spread the contagion. He agreed more out of idle curiosity than belief in the destructive forces. Now, centuries later, Joseph lives among the tumultuous worlds in the maelstrom of the Void Dancer, joyfully serving his master. After his ascension, he retained his human form, but inside he transformed into a seething cauldron of deadly viruses. It is said that Joseph, having become a demon, ultimately grew lazy, although he could have become one of the greatest servants of the Lord of Decay if he had applied even a sliver of effort. But the carrier is content to spread the plague and fulfill Nurgle's will as he sees fit, appearing aboard ships lost in the warp and offering a way out of the Imperium's grasp. Strangely enough, desperate humans often accept help from the shaggy, unwashed void dweller who simply appears on the ship with a lazy smile offering a free passage, and even vessels of the Imperial Navy have fallen victim to him. True to his word, the carrier leads every starship out of the warp each time and disappears as soon as it re-enters the real world. Of course, by that time he has already performed the sinister will of Nurgle, and the unfortunate sailors become spreaders of the gifts of the Lord of Flies.